that is something that I've had to talk with people before where they're like, "Oh, well, the judges are biased because she used to be at this gym." And I'm like, "Well, you have to think about it for a minute. If you're a cheerleading judge, you probably have some sort of cheerleading background. Nobody woke up one day as a basketball referee and said, 'I'm gonna judge cheerleading.'" Like, you have to have some sort of connection with cheerleading, whether you cheered somewhere, you coach somewhere, whatever it is. But when you're up on that stand, you're held to the standard of you have to be consistent, and it also sticks out like a sore thumb if you're not.
Welcome to today's episode of Here for Cheer. It is episode number 10, and we are so grateful for all of the support and love of every one of our incredible guests. Today's guest is Gabby Mauro. She is a certified judge. She is also a score review specialist. She is very active on social media, educating and helping to bridge the gap between gym owners and coaches and parents with Scoresheets. She's fair and has a really good, well rounded perspective. She brings so much knowledge and realness to this role as a judge in our industry. And I'm super excited to have her on today to pick her brain. So, Gabby, welcome to the episode.
Hey, I am super excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
I can't wait to kind of get your perspective on all things score sheet, all things judging. And as we get started, I just want to hear a little bit about what kind of inspired you to become a judge.
Yeah, I love answering this question. So, first I started as an all-star cheerleader for like 12 years. It was my whole entire life. Then I got into coaching high school as well as coaching all-star teams, and I just loved it. And then I actually had a friend who worked for varsity who reached out to me and my best friend and was like, "Hey, I think you guys would be really good judges. Like, you're such great coaches. You should get into judging." So I did that for a year and just absolutely loved it. Like, it was just a whole different perspective sitting on that side of the table, and you get to appreciate how much time and energy and effort goes in from coaches and athletes. So I just really liked being on the other side. And then after I was like coaching and judging, which was a crazy time, I was doing both. I just decided like, hey, there's this huge gap between what happens on the judges stand, what you see on the score sheets, and what we actually know as coaches. And unless like you're a coach that goes to all the conferences or jumps on the monthly calls, you don't really have the opportunity to like sit down with the judge and be like, "Can you explain this to me?" Or like, "How do I max out this category?" So I just had a conversation with a couple of my coaching friends and was like, "Guys, do you think this is a good idea? Like, I feel like I could really be that person to, like you said, bridge that gap and just educate." And they were like, "Yeah, go for it." So I was not, if you've ever seen some of my social media, I like was really trying to learn how to, like, be the social media face. I bought one of those phone stands for my car, like, I was really trying. And now I love
Yes.
it. Like, I get home from my full-time job and I'm like, "Okay, what video can I record today to educate people?" And I don't know, I just love it. I think the teacher in me loves just educating people.
Yes. No, that's great. And I think it's awesome to have you on. And because a lot of the times I think everyone assumes that the person on the judge's stand is this, person that just wants to ruin children's and coaches' lives. And that is not the case. You are doing this because you love the sport. You love the artistic, the creativity, all of those wonderful things. You love, being able to give back to an industry and kind of keeping your hand in something that, has brought you so much joy. And so I think it's great watching you on your social, kind of like you said, bridging that gap of you're like a regular person that truly does just want to do your job great and, and does not want to ruin people's days or lives
Mhm.
as a judge.
It's
The
so
hours
accurate.
are long. Yeah, you're taking time away from your family, you're traveling to different places, you're on that riser for long, long days. And yeah, it's so nice and refreshing to kind of have your take on things. And I'm excited to, like I said, just hear more of the things that you wish coaches, gym owners, parents, athletes, everyone knew. I know number one, I think it's hugely important as a gym owner myself that coaches, even if you're hiring a choreographer, that you understand the rubric, that you understand the score sheet. And it's so, so important. That piece, number one, is to educate yourself and to educate your staff on those things, and I think you probably agree with that. But what are some of the things that you wish coaches knew about, judging and scoring? Like 3 of your top things that you wish that they would all know.
Well, I had, like, 3 really good answers for this, but as you said earlier, like, "We're not there to ruin your lives," that made me laugh because it's
Yeah.
so true, like, when I was coaching and judging, I finally understood. I was like, "Oh my god, like, these people are just here because they love cheerleading and they're not." That is never a conversation on the judge's stance. I'm gonna change my first answer and say that, like, I think the first one is judges are there for the coaches. We're there for the kids. We're there because we love cheerleading. But
Yes.
rubric-wise, I think really the one of the most important things is any of those, like, black and white sections on United where you have, like, a set score, you don't get rewarded for doing more. And I think so many people
Yes.
go in and they're like, okay, if I do like on your regular elite teams, if I do more than 4 elites in my stunt section, if I do 6, 7, 8, I'm going to get rewarded for that. And the amount of times that people will come into score review and they'll be like, hey, so my team did 8 elites and this team did 4. How did they outscore us? Or why did they score the same? It's tough to have that conversation to say, hey, I understand your feelings on it, but the way that this rubric is set up is anything that's black and white, you do not get rewarded for doing more. So that would definitely be
Yes.
a top one for me.
I agree wholeheartedly. I choreograph all of my own routines in the gym, and I've done choreography for a really long time before, kind of just busier with my life and my family and kids. But I'm always telling coaches like that random basket in the back, don't do it if they're going to take off execution points. Like
Yes.
if we've done the baskets we have to do, don't throw a random basket. And I find that that's one of the most common mistakes. Coaches are like, oh, but this is fun. Let's just throw one in here. And it's like, ugh, unless it's perfect, you're giving judges an opportunity to take some points away. And yeah, and just do what you need to do to hit. It doesn't change anything to do any extra. I always say
Yep.
the same thing of adding in extra jumpers. If you're not required to put all those jumpers on, don't put them in unless they all
No.
are phenomenal jumpers. Find another way to smoke and mirrors some of your routine, and maybe hide some of your weaknesses and that way. So I love that you touched on that. Okay, what's number 2?
Number 2 is you're gonna take everything I just said and throw it out the window when it comes to pyramid because pyramid
Yes.
is one of, like, the only sections that I like to whenever I talk about the rubric, I always refer to the elite rubric because I feel like that's kind of the base one, and then whether you're, like, an international team or a prep team, you kinda go off of that, but
Yes.
that is like a sliding scale. So once you get into that high range of a 3, 5, all the extras matter, and I think sometimes people are like, "Well, like, how do you get the perfect 4.0? What is the way to do it?" And there really is no formula. There's no, like, if you do this, you're gonna get a 4.0, which is so different than every other section of the rubric.
Yes.
So a lot of times when I do, like, coaches trainings with them, I explain to them, this is one of those subjective categories, and you may go to one competition and score a 3, 6, and then 2 weeks later do the exact same pyramid and score a 3, 8. And so that's a subjective category based on, like, what that judge deems as difficult, and so I always
Yes.
just say, like, if there's gonna be one part of your routine to give it all, it's your pyramid.
I love that. And then kind of touching on that, when I had Patrick Smith on, he mentioned, trying to get a mini pyramid in somewhere to just add to that score. And I know that we're always looking at structures, you're looking at versatility and who can do what. You're looking at all of those kind of wow power moments that just kind of impress you and take, your breath away, and the body positions and all those things. And I know as coaches, we want everything to know how to score perfectly, but at the end of the day, we want creativity. We love that. I mean, I love that piece of it, that we're not all cookie cutter routines, that we have that element of creativity and art. And so, but with that comes that some opinions are going to be different, and it doesn't make right or wrong or indifferent. It's just the sport. And I think there is always a little bit of luck. And as long as you're kind of honest and transparent with your athletes, your parents, your coaches, I always say that even when we've won, that like there's a little bit of luck that went into it, a little bit of luck of who went before us, who went after us, where our number was drawn in a big division. And even to our parents, I explain that there's no way we can do everything right and we're not always going to win, even if we think we should, because again, it is subjective. And I always try to explain as well, I'm going to take out a pair of Nike shoes and I'm going to show it to you and let you look at it for 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And then you get 2 minutes and 30 seconds to jot notes. And here comes the next pair. And here comes the next pair. And here comes the next pair. And it's really hard to, to not have a little bit of that luck. I know as judges, you're taking those notes, you're trying to be so thorough in every sense of the word. But when divisions are like 40 teams,
Oh,
it really is knowing the other side of it. It's really hard. And, you truly are trying your best just to award everything correctly and all those things. So yeah, I love that you touched on that. Okay, number 3.
okay, number 3 is I specifically thought of this because I was just talking to a coach the other day, which, like, sparked a whole conversation on social media in, like, the standing tumbling section on the elite rubric where you have the choice of doing an advanced skill or an elite skill. It literally says
Yes.
advanced/elite skill, and people will ask
Mhm.
me, "Okay, well, am I gonna get rewarded somewhere for doing the elite? Does it boost my creativity score? Does it boost my overall score?" And the answer is no. It's, one of those things that anytime I get asked that question, I always say, "You just have to pick whatever's cleaner for your team." Because I've had conversations with coaches where they're like, "Oh, well, my team can do a back walkover switch leg more clean than they could do a regular back walkover." Okay, in that case, absolutely, then go for the elite skill. But I
Yes.
think it just boils down to, like, a lot of the difficulty sections minus pyramid are black and white. You do what you need to do. It's like a checkbox. You get that and you move on, where in execution, there's so much more opportunity for a judge to look at every little detail of what you're doing, and I don't think
Yes.
people know this, they're 2 separate judges. You have one person who's only focused on
Yes.
difficulty and one who's only focused on execution. So, full I you know this about me now, like, I'm very real, I'm very transparent, I'll always tell you how it is. If I'm the difficulty judge, I don't care what it looks like, I'm strictly looking at, is the skill being performed correctly? And then, like, so that I can
Yes.
count it for credit. And then if I'm the execution judge, to me, it doesn't even matter what level you are because I'm really just looking at, like, how the skill's being done and the critique of, like, the technique of it. So, again, I think those type of parts of the score sheet where if you have the choice to do something that's easier, do it because you're going to just save yourself from losing those execution points.
Yes, 100%. And it's again those numbers, that number game. With tumbling, we see it a lot that they're like, "Well, we all kind of have them, but if they're." I again try to really talk to coaches about if they're not perfect technique, there's no sense in adding them in just to make them
Right,
feel good that like, "Hey, I have a back handspring, but maybe that back handspring is not game ready."
right,
And so it's so important to know those numbers and to put the right ones in. And then I also always suggest like a buffer of maybe adding one more of something specifically in running tumbling in case that kid gets out on the mat and has a little too much power and doesn't throw that layout. And oh my
right.
gosh, now we're under numbers, and now we're not hitting a range. So those are some kind of tips and tricks that I also try to educate coaches on. And so I love that you touched on that as well because it is really important. And so now this brings us into execution. And execution is so important. Not how hard things are as much as that execution score, right? So can you touch a little bit on execution?
Yes, execution is like my wheelhouse. I love talking about execution because, like I said, even though it's a subjective score, I think the thing that is like the biggest struggle for coaches is when you look at that rubric, you get, and you can read the words right at the top of the execution categories. It says limited or not, might not be limited to, or whatever the exact wording is. And pretty much what they're saying is, here are some examples of things that judges look for. And I think it's like 4 bullet points for flyers, for bases, for transitions and sync. It is so much more than that because to give you just a specific example, if you look under flyers, the first bullet point is body control. There's like 15 sub bullet points of body control that judges look at. We're looking at where is the weight of the flyer? Are they waiting on release skills? Where are their hips and like there's so many things. And so anytime I have conversations with coaches, one of the big things I tell them is it's okay in November, December, January to not be competing your summit or your world's routine. Don't. It's okay because
Yes.
execution is what's going to win. And there's nothing worse than judging a November competition that's 13 hours long and everybody falls all day. because the teams that are the ones
Yes.
that end up scoring well are the ones that maybe are scoring like a 3.6 or a 3.7 in their pyramid difficulty, but they're crushing their execution because going back to what we talked about before, all the other difficulty scores, if you're hitting them, everyone's getting the same score. So really the parts that like execution is such a heavy load of separating the top from the bottom in the rankings because when we're looking at a
Yes.
team, there's so many things that we can take off for on execution where difficulty is so black and white. So I really emphasize to coaches like take your summer practices, take your October, November practices and that first competition to work on confidence and execution because if you can build like a solid foundation to your routine that's hitting really, really strong, then when you go to start sprinkling in some more difficulty, it's going to come so much easier than if you're trying to like force something that's just not ready yet.
Yes. Yes. I think that is so valuable and such a great takeaway. And even as you're talking about execution, I find that even in, our program sometimes we're so hyper fixated on the bigger areas, like the stunting, the tumbling, and the reminder for coaches to also focus on the execution of jumps. We have
Ah.
lost some big events based on we're pretty much the same with every team and then that jump score. And like that is what it allowed us to be in the top spot or took that second place or that third place. And we've had it happen to us. And it's a good wake up and reminder that jump execution matters too. And I don't think coaches spend enough time on jumps as well as that dance execution. I know that, you mentioned also like in conversation before that with the dance, just having difficulty in the dance, you also have to be able to execute it crispy, clean pictures, moments is what kind of
Yes.
we talk to our kids about. So yeah, a little bit. Can you talk a little bit about execution of jumps and those drivers of what coaches should really look for?
Yeah, well, you kinda nailed it earlier when you said, let's say your number that you need, I'm just kind of pulling numbers out here. Let's say the number that you need to
Yes.
jump to get your top score is 12, but you have 15 on your team. I always get like, "Okay, well, I'm just gonna put the extra 3 kids in so that they can jump." And you said it. If it is not perfect, it's not worth it to add those kids in because
Mm-mm.
as the
No.
execution judge, I'm not counting. I don't care how many jumpers there are. I'm just watching the jumps as a whole. So we want to make sure as coaches that you're picking those strong kids that are going to execute that section beautifully because that's all that that judge is looking for. So I think one of the big things for
Yes.
jumps is landings are a big one. A lot of teams will land and bounce and move on to the next thing and they don't take the time to like squeeze the bottom of that landing and showcase to the judges, hey, look, I can land with my toes together. I don't need to bounce off the floor. I can use my core to stay strong at the bottom. That's a big one that always comes off. Um, Definitely too, like body control of where our leg placement is, making sure that our legs are locked with pointed toes. And we see a lot of like those bent knees that frog down to the bottom. Truthfully, we'd rather see a
Yes.
lower jump that has locked out legs and pointed toes and can snap their feet together at the bottom than to see a hyper extended jump that has like flex feet and comes down all bent. So I agree with you. I think even when I was running an all-star gym, it's almost like the habit of nature of, oh, well, we have to hit our stunts and we know that jumps are just we're just gonna jump. We know that that's gonna happen, but stunts and tumbling, like there's a risk of falling. So I completely agree that it's one of those sections that's almost overlooked sometimes. It's like, okay, well, jumps are what they are, and we're gonna do jump drills once a month, and then we're gonna move on and hope for the best. But
Yes.
you also have to remember too with execution that all of those points are doubled on your overall score. So if you're losing a point 1 on your
Yes.
landings, it's actually a point
Yes.
2 on your overall score.
Yes.
And that
Yes.
is at Summit. Oh my God, look at the point differentials between the first place team and the 10th place team. Sometimes it's like point
A
zero 0.02. So it's
absolutely.
so important.
Yes. And then I think another thing that you kinda just touched on is also as judges that you know where to look. Like, you're not looking at our point jumper and, getting an execution score from that. You're looking to where we're trying to hide those other maybe jumpers that aren't as strong or as crispy clean. And so I think it's an important tip for coaches as well to make sure that they're panning when you're watching your routine. So many coaches you find sit right center, right up front, and are kind of just only to see right there and not realizing that I want my coaches to go stand in the back corner and get views from there on spacing, on seamless transitions. I want to see over in the corner. I want to watch someone brand new watching my routine that's never seen it, and I want to see where your eyes are traveling. Because as a coach, sometimes we know that Susie, struggles with that skill. So I'm watching her and cheering and clapping, and I'm missing that there's some things going not really smooth over here as well. So I like that, in talking about execution, reminding everyone that every spot on the floor matters. And it's not
Right.
just what we want everyone to watch. You're trained to see the things that they don't want us to see.
Yeah, I
So,
think some of it too, and I've had this conversation a lot recently because people ask me like, "What's the best jump approach?" or "What's the best approach into tumbling?" And if you really look at the wording on the score sheet, it all comes down to uniformity. You get team A that comes out that
yes.
does a clap and a high V for their jump, and then team B comes out and they do that punch forward. And as judges, we can't take any points for any stylistic difference. It doesn't matter how you teach it. It comes down to the uniformity of it. So exactly what you said, like, I'm not watching center girl, I'm watching everybody as a whole because I'm not looking for, "Oh, center has the best jumps," or, "Oh, that girl in the back, like, she doesn't have it." We really look at it as, is it a widespread issue of the team? Is it a few athletes? And if it's just one kid, like, they're going to stick out, of course. You really wanna try to make all of your jumps, and this applies to stunts, it applies to tumbling, anything you have an execution score, you wanna focus on the uniformity as the team as a whole. Does it look like one solid unit when they're doing it? And like I said, you could come out and have 2 teams do the exact same thing, and one team could make it look super uniform where the other, it doesn't, and so that would give me as a judge the opportunity to take points away.
Yes. And I think that what you just said there as well, that like we want to, as coaches, choreographers, we want to not give you any reason to take points away. We want to go around. I always say it's like the Pac Man, and we want to pick up those points. So section by section, I want my kids hyper focused on the section they're in. And I want them getting every one of those drivers and every one of those points. And then working our way through the routine, not getting ahead of ourselves, not worrying about the pyramid, one section at a time, Pac-Man, picking up the points along the road.
I love that.
And I think, yeah, it's a really important thing for us to kind of train our kids about. And going back to the rubric and how important it is that coaches are educated, how important do you feel like it is that athletes understand
Oh
that
my
scoring
gosh.
system as well?
Oh my gosh. So, just to talk a little bit about my own personal experience and how much I saw it make a difference. When I used to run an all-star gym, I was judging at the same time. And when I would sit down and have conversations with either the team as a whole or maybe like you said before, maybe that athlete who has their back handspring and is not understanding why they're not in that tumble pass. And I kind of explained
Yes.
it as, and I know we'll probably talk about this later too, because a lot of times those athletes see themselves as like extra athletes when they're not being used, but they're not, because every single athlete through every part of the routine, somebody's job on the stand is to watch them. So when they
Yes.
understand, okay, my run off backhand spring talk might not be up to snuff right now. Like I would be one of the people that would cause my team to lose drivers on landings or lose drivers on body control. And then when they see that on the score sheet and they're like, "Oh my gosh, like we lost point 0.1 in landings and that's point 0.2 overall and we're in third by point 0.1." Then they're like, "Oh," and you almost have to like instill into them that they have to be selfless and think of it as like they're an important piece to such a bigger puzzle, and so when I would sit down and have those
Yes.
conversations with kids and, like, they would see it at competition, we would get to competition, and on day 1, we would get some type of comment for maybe, like, an extra pass that we had, and, this, like, actually happened to one of my teams, and I said, "Hey, we're gonna take that pass out on day 2," and I remember the athlete at the time being like, "I really wanna keep it in," and I said, "Just trust me." And we went out on day 2, and we didn't do that pass, and we didn't get the execution driver taken off, and we ended up moving up in the rankings because of it, and so, it is so
Yes.
important that they understand their role and how whether it's in something or not in something, it plays a bigger piece to that puzzle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just understanding sometimes even creatively, like it just isn't working, that you might have great tumbling, but you're over here for this stunt and I need somebody else to go. There's so much more that goes into it. And I think then as parents are educated on a score sheet, they also are then understanding why you're making decisions as a coach or as a choreographer.
Yes.
I always tell too, in speaking at different conferences, that, a lot of the disconnect with specifically, I find like dads, is that it's really easy if your child plays basketball that I can watch the ball go through the hoop and I go, wow, that was a point. Like I don't have to
Right.
be a basketball guru to be able to kind of follow a game. Cheerleading, it is a whole different animal. And for a dad, I think sometimes the disconnect is not understanding, not knowing. But when they know, my dads are fired up and hyped up. They're in our talks after day one, we usually get together as a program and go over the score sheet together, so I can kind of write the narrative. I can kind of allow them to understand where we're placing, why we're placing, the game plan for day two, get everybody hyped and excited. And now, as my dads are understanding the score sheet, they are like, yeah, we got this. I saw that. Did you see that team? I think, and they're way more involved. So that education piece across the board is imperative. And I love that kind of also agree that it's a really important piece. So extras on the floor. Based on this score sheet, we really are allowed to add in kids on a level that maybe don't have the tumbling yet, or maybe they're better at a different area. They're a strong stunter, or, they're strong with showmanship, or all of the different things. And I love that for a sport. But I think one of the mistakes that people make with those extras is not choreographing them in. So, can you kind of touch on what you'd love to see extras doing in a routine?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm going to kind of tell you from two different perspectives because I think one of the first times we see this is during like everyone calls it the elite section, like their stunt section, not their pyramid, their stunts, where maybe
Yep.
they're only putting up their most groups, so they have 4 or 5 leftover kids. And like you said, a common misconception from parents is, well, why is my kid not in the air? Why are we not putting up that extra group? And so from the perspective of building, I think one of the ways that you can utilize those athletes is any sort of like creative transition where you have an extra catcher or an extra person that needs to like grab a foot or do like a cool flipping move. Anytime that you can utilize them in sections like that, that's great. Or just anything that is going to like I always say that if you're gonna put something in a routine, there needs to be a purpose behind it. So before when you mentioned like, oh, just throwing in the extra basket toss, you have to ask yourself, well, what was the purpose of that? Why did we do that? And so if you just have 5 athletes that are nuggeting at the back, what's the purpose that they're serving right now? There isn't one. And
Yes.
so when you are the building judge in the perspective of I'm looking at it from the creativity point because I give a creativity score. I'm asking myself, okay, well, were those kids used to do something really cool? They were, and it doesn't necessarily need to be an elite skill because you don't need another elite skill, but who said you can't do a quick level 1 transition that's creative on a level 14 because it helps. And then from the perspective of an overall judge too, whenever there's tumbling sections that are happening or back to those building sections or whenever there's extra athletes in the routine. I have watched so many routines that are so amazing because they utilize those extra athletes. I said this on a video I made the other day. It's like yin and yang, where it's like if something's up, they're down. And when they're down, they're up. And the
Yes.
opposite of that. And so being able to utilize those kids to emphasize whatever else is happening in the routine, it is just as important as whatever element you're trying to emphasize. So I I almost, like, hate the term extra athletes because they're not extra, because they should be utilized because they're just as much a part of that team as that center flyer is, that back spot that's on the right-hand side, and that's
Yes.
why I love judging so much because you can appreciate that. You can sit there as an overall
Yes.
judge and appreciate every single athlete for every role that they play, and I think sometimes, like, when I was an athlete, we miss that. We don't understand, like, well, I'm not the center flyer, so, like, the eyes aren't on me. Oh, they are because the overall judge is watching you. So just looking at it
Yes.
from, like, a I tell coaches or anytime I go into gyms and help athletes out, I tell them this. I want you to take your coaching or your athlete hat off and put your judge hat on and think about it as I don't know that your name is Susie. I don't know that you've been on senior four for the last 5 teams. I just know that you're whatever the team name is and you're right in front of me and I'm watching you as a whole.
Mhm. Yes, and that taking the emotions piece out, I think coaches, are so passionate about their kids and their love for their team and their journey that sometimes they forget that you as a judge have to take the emotion out and you don't know. You don't realize that man, we replaced 2 athletes this week, or we're going through a hardship, or this is the best it's ever looked, or, there's this story behind it that, they're celebrating. And so they've got kind of those passion blinders on that
Right.
parents have that we talk about that, they're just so passionate and they mean well. Coaches, same thing. They got to take off the passion blinders and really look at it, kind of more black and white. And
Yeah.
I think some things that, a gym can do is making sure they start strong. I think that first impression, like that first impression rose, it's like they need to catch your attention as a judge. You've maybe watched 300 routines today and, they're all kind of similar, they're all kind of flowing and, you're going through your job. You need something that's going to like draw you in and catch you that they're strong with. You need to keep that routine exciting and building like a movie, that they're like they can't take their eyes off the screen. They're just like here for it. And then always remembering to end with something that we know is going to be clean and crispy. Like the
Yeah.
last impression in your brain as a judge, I do not want me dropping a pyramid. And then now, you're taking your time in between teams to finalize scores, write down your notes. I want us to finish so strong. And I know you also kind of touched on before that it's so important that athletes don't give up, that they fight to the last drop. Number
Yes.
one, you don't realize that what coaches have seen, I mean, what judges have seen, in cheerleading, we're given gifts, and some days we feel like we didn't get a gift, but it just kind of is the way the cookie crumbles, so to speak, that we've all been in the boat where a judge has missed maybe a kid tripped on the back of the mat, or maybe a tumbling pass didn't go and they didn't catch it, or there was a little bobble in a stunt and they didn't call it. We've all been given cheer gifts. And then other times we feel like, oh, we really were the better team, or another team got a gift and maybe not in our favor. So I think it's really important that coaches, athletes, parents understand that piece of our sport that, again, it comes back to we try to get it perfect and right, but there is a little bit of luck that goes into it. So, can you talk about as a judge watching, maybe something go wrong in a routine, but those kids keep going and keep coming back and don't let it affect the rest of the routine? What's that like? That feeling being on the rise or watching versus a team that you can just see it on their face for the rest of the routine.
Yeah. So I specifically thought of I was doing a coaches training a couple weeks ago and there were parents on it too, which I loved. And one of the parents asked me this question and they said, "What happens on the judges stand when someone gets hurt? Or like if a stunt falls and the routine stops, like what happens?" And that's such a valid question because when I was a coach, I have no idea. I was like, well, my team's going back to warm-ups. Like, here we go. I guess we'll figure it out. So
Yep.
I think that goes hand in hand with what you're asking because so when that happens on the judges stand, we stop judging at whatever the point is that the routine stopped. And then when that team comes back out on the floor, we just start judging from wherever we stopped. And there's nothing
Yes.
better than like not even being able to tell that something happened. If you allow that to carry through your team, because let's be honest, we're all human. Like that stinks that your team just had to go back to warm ups. Now your adrenaline's pumping. You're nervous about something that's probably gonna have to change, but if you can come out on the floor and just be like, "Hey, we're good," and, like, still show that confidence on your face, that's what we're looking for, especially in that showmanship aspect. Like, we're looking for those teams that just make it look easy and make it look like they're performing, and you know what? If I'm the overall judge and a mistake happens, and then they don't show it on their face, okay, there might have been, like, they show it for a quick second, that's fine, but then you pick it right back up again. For me, I'm like, "Oh, that was great." Like, they're gonna keep going. But if you allow that to carry through the rest of your routine, A, it's definitely gonna affect your showmanship score. And I can almost guarantee from my experience of watching thousands of routines, it's gonna hurt you somewhere in execution. Because if you're showing it here, your body is not working the same way as it would when you're confidently performing a skill. So if now you're kind of like slumping around in your stunts, that's gonna crush you on your execution too. So we would way rather see a team that it doesn't matter what happens, pyramid falls to the floor, you miss your tumble pass. If you pop right back up and just keep going, it almost gives us the like moment on the stand rather than the, oh God, here we go. So I don't even know if people like understand. And I get it. Like a lot of these athletes, they're kids, like they're young and they carry those emotions with them. And I know my coaches growing up would be like, you suck it up on your face until you're off the floor, and then you can let it out backstage. And I also think that
Yes.
that's a lesson for the rest of their lives. Like, so I mentioned to you,
Yes.
I'm a teacher full time. If one of my students or parent says something to me at school or I make a mistake, I can't show that on my face when I'm in the workplace. So as soon as I can get behind closed doors, then I can let it out. And so it's such a bigger thing than just let's get through this competition routine. It really is something that like they're going to carry with them for the rest of their lives.
Yes. No, absolutely. And celebrating the controllables, I think as a coach and you as an educator, I know that you agree that like controllables are what we need to celebrate. Controlling that, yes, something went wrong, but you continue to be a good teammate. You continue to bring great energy to the routine. You continue to not give up. Those are the things we can celebrate. Sometimes things just happen. And, I like to think I'm a good driver. I work hard at driving. I like driving. Sometimes I hit a curb, and don't tell my husband, but oops, like I'm driving along and I hit a little curb and it doesn't mean that I didn't like want to be a good driver. I don't care. Like sometimes things just happen. And the more that we can get kids to understand that, number one, it's not life or death. And that kind of pressure doesn't allow them to be their best self if they're having the pressure of this is life or death. It's cheerleading at the end of the day. And as long as you go out and do your best and give it your all, those are the most important things that should matter. And then you create an environment for athletes where they are not afraid to fail, where
Right.
they know that failing is just part of life sometimes. And like, I would love if every one of my teams went to every single event, scored perfectly, had perfect routines, and, like never went through an adversity, never went through something where we had to learn from it and take the comments on our score sheet or take our scores and go back and go, okay, maybe we like this, but it's not scoring right. Like, we need to kind of adjust something here and try something new, So it's so important that, we allow those kids to grow in that way. So yeah,
Yes.
I love that you touched on that. And then so now with showmanship, just another piece of that. How important is it that, you know, athletes also, we kind of talked about with not enough time on jumps, that they take time to go through that showmanship piece,
Yes.
and how big of a difference that can make of the exact same routine. One, just kind of going through the motions, one with that incredible showmanship.
Yeah, so all the judges on the judges stand get to give a showmanship score. Your building judges work together, your tumbling judge get works together, and then your overall judge, and then it's a combination of all of those scores. And I could tell you from so many times there have been a moment where like you said, they finish that routine and it's just like, whoa, like that was awesome. And you'll like we feel it up there and we'll like look at each other and be like, did you see that? Yeah, I saw that. Like we have those conversations up there and we want to reward those teams. And it doesn't
Yes.
necessarily come down to, like, the hardest routines because you could make a solid routine doing, like, the bare minimum for those black and white categories and make it look phenomenal. Like, I've made so many videos of
Yes.
simple things, like a simple ripple, a simple motion that just makes you go like, "Oh my gosh." And that showmanship comes down to the confidence. It comes down to how confidently are you performing that skill, and then are you, like, engaging the crowd when you're doing it. And when I say that, I don't mean like, are you going up and fist bumping to the front? I more mean like, are you putting on a show for us? Are you there to say, look at how hard I've worked? Look at all the time and energy myself, my team, my coaches have put in. Like, we're here to have a good time because really, I think sometimes showmanship gets confused with the like, "Oh, we're here to win," and like, of course you're there to win. It's a competition. Everybody's there to win. But really what we're looking for is we're a sport. We're a sport that's now coming into the Olympics. Like, we want to look at it as a professional sport now that we have these professional teams. It's all about the confidence. It's all about putting on a show, performing,
Yes.
and doing it well, and that's what we wanna see, the genuine smile, the genuine eye contact, the enthusiasm, all those things that you see on the score sheet, but you almost want to, like, make the judges feel it. Like, if you hit that routine and you're so solid
Yes.
and confident, I'm telling you, like, there have been teams that I've watched that give me goosebumps up there, and some of them even have mistakes, like, they fell in the beginning and I
Yep.
forgot about it because they just went and did their pyramid and it was so beautiful, and okay, they lost, they had a building fall, but you know what? Like, everything else was so crisp and clean, so it makes
Yes.
just as much as of a difference on that score sheet as any of those other sections do.
Absolutely. I love that you touched on that piece of like celebrating beautiful cheerleading. I know that, from my time judging, I just want to see kids having the time of their lives,
Yeah.
like, and just showing their passion and their love for the sport, their love for their routine. And I think that a lot of times athletes forget that the people that are usually on the risers are a little bit older. So I'm not a child that wants someone slashing at me and like, "Hoo-ah," and, like coming at me or
Yes.
rolling their eyes or
Uh,
sticking out their tongues or those. I'm like a little old lady on the stand who just, like who just wants good, wholesome, like
yes, yes,
happy children.
yes,
And I think that they forget that I love that you touch on the piece that when you're competing, you're, getting a score from judges. It's not all of your competitors that
right.
you're like trying to, bleh, look all tough for.
Yeah, you
And so
almost
I
think
think that was a
about it
really important piece that I love.
I think about it as, like, if you go out and you're the only team in your division, you're still getting a score because the judges are the ones
Yes.
that are giving you a score. So whether you have 1 team or like you said at Summit, sometimes there's 60 teams in a division, you're getting a score based on your routine. You're not getting a score. This united scoring, it's not comparative. As much as like there are some subjective categories, it's not a comparative score sheet. So it doesn't matter what the teams did before you or the teams do after you. It matters what happens in your routine. So athletes have to think
Yes.
about that when they're on the floor. I always say, like, if grandma is at the front of the crowd and you wouldn't do it, don't do it. If grandma is standing there, are you gonna stick your tongue out? Are you gonna roll your eyes? Or are
Yeah.
you gonna be like, "Grandma, look at how hard I worked," and, like, be so excited to
Yes.
show grandma that routine? Because really, like you said, like, we're up there on the judges stand, sometimes that is literally 13 to 14 hours, and we've had 2 pee breaks all day. Like, I just want someone who gets me
Yes.
excited in my seat.
Yes. Yes. No, absolutely. And I love that you pointed out as well about you versus the score sheet. Cause that's, like, I think that that's a great piece of advice to gym owners and coaches to focus in on the score sheet and
Right.
your team versus the score sheet, not necessarily what the team down the block is doing. That team over there, like it's so important to have that tunnel vision. And I think it's our job as coaches to make sure that I always say that before my kids get in the car and arrive at that event, that I have equipped them to score an A+ on the test. Like, so if
Yes.
I don't understand the rubric and I've put something in that's dangerous or that's not hitting or that's not consistent, or I've put a kid into a tumbling pass that's probably going to touch down, or I've not understood, what I need to do to hit the elites or how to properly send in my videos. I think that that is also ownership to get all of that kind of safety stuff checked ahead of time and to make sure that when you're doing something crazy creative, even if they don't catch it at a smaller event, they're going to catch it by Summit, or by some of these bigger events. And it's so important that you do that and you do your diligence in setting these kids up for success. And I think
Yes.
that sometimes coaches don't take accountability as much as they should. And it goes back to tryouts. I mean, it literally goes back to tryouts and who you put on that roster
Yep.
that determines the rest of your season, those numbers, understanding those numbers. I know for my
Yes.
coaches, like I want them to have that laminated piece of paper that we can also go back and do those checks. So as a coach, I think it's so imperative that they understand, okay, I need this many doing that advanced skill, this many doing that elite skill, this many max here, and that you're constantly going back and check and balance that because sometimes maybe they decide, ooh, in this part, we're not going to have this kid jump toe touch, but you forget that that jump was supposed to count the jump score. And then all of a sudden, I know that it's happened to us before. You're down on numbers, you get your score sheet. It says that you didn't get your just like general jump score. And I'm like, what are they talking about? And we're going crazy. And then we go and we say, no, they're right. Like we forgot that we changed choreography and we never went back and checked. And we own that. We'll tell our kids, our families, our parents, we're human. But I think it's an important piece that coaches can take away to have those numbers, to laminate, highlight to always know, oh, we just added, Becky on the team. Okay, well, now did that change numbers? Do we
Right.
need an extra stunt? It's so important to understand that rubric fully. So
Yeah.
when it comes to creativity, what can you tell us? What are the secret sauce to getting that creativity score? Because I think that's also a place that's subjective. And sometimes when everything else is similar, that piece can be a big, make it or break it for your team.
Absolutely, absolutely. People that is like whenever I do coaches trainings, that's the first question I'm asked. It's like, "I am always getting a 1.7 and a 1.8 in creativity, please help me." So, 2 parts. We'll start with building. Building, like I mentioned before, anytime that you can utilize extra people for like a creative in or a creative out or a creative transition between skills, do it. Now, when I say creative transition skills, remember that none of those skills for your stunt section specifically count towards your difficulty score. So, with that being said, it doesn't matter what level they are. I am the queen of
Yes.
telling people to utilize the teddy bear because the teddy bear is it. Like, you can make a level 1 teddy bear look so cool on a level 7
Yes.
team. Like, go watch the teams that win worlds. I can guarantee somewhere in the routine they have a teddy bear. And it doesn't have to be like some crazy thing, but like just I always tell this is the secret sauce. I tell coaches, look at the levels below you. Look at level, if you're a level 3 team, look at 2, look at 1, look at those level appropriate skills. They don't even have to be elite skills. Look at those and say, okay, can I utilize a shoulder stand, a teddy bear, a shoulder sit, or whatever the skills are in those higher, a half twist to prone, like anything like that. And I also say, like, I try when I do choreography to pick skills that have a small risk of falling. If you're putting in like a body position that's like in an extended set in the back, okay, is that creative? A little bit, but like think of skills that are moving, like something that is moving and is eye catching. And so there's a lot of things you can do that are more just like a movement and a transition where like the flyer is still holding on to someone where you have a little less risk of falling than you do in an elite stunt. That's what I would say for stunt
Yes.
section. For pyramid, honestly, it's the same thing because all of those skills do count towards your difficulty score in pyramid. And if you read the rubric, it says one of the degree of difficulty drivers is utilization of level appropriate and non level appropriate skills. So again, you can be a level 5 team that's incorporating 360 show and goes or a twisting teddy bear or anything to keep things moving. So never giving
Yes.
there should never be an opportunity as a judge, I'm looking at your stunt section or your pyramid section going, "Oh, they should have done an entry there," or, "Oh, those fires just bumped straight down. They could have done a little level 1 lift to get them out of the pyramid." That's building. For tumbling, it's totally different, and I almost kinda hate that, like, it's listed as tumbling creativity because it's really not tumbling creativity. It's I wish we could tweak the wording on it and say, like, the formations and transitions of tumbling because it really comes down
Yes.
to, like, what patterns, what formations are you using that's emphasizing whatever the tumbling skill is that you're doing? So we're not looking for you to do some crazy handstand, half turn, one armed back walkover. Like that's not what that's
Yes.
for. But like as a coach, before I judged, that's what I thought it was because it's tumbling creativity and I'm going to take responsibility. I wasn't reading the fine print that says the formations enhance the skill. Like I read tumbling creativity and that's what my brain went to. But really, it's like, okay, are you doing where you're, I'm going to say this word, even though I hate it, your extra kids, are you utilizing them during a
Yes.
tumbling pass to do something that if they're doing tucks and they're up, are those extra kids doing something that makes them go down or drop to the floor? Are they in a diagonal formation and tumblers are coming through them? So it's a common misconception that we're looking for creative ins and outs. We're not. We're really just looking for creative patterns and formations that enhance whatever the skill is that you want the judges to see, especially those
Yes.
tumbling judges, because I am certified to do tumbling. I love tumbling, but I hate it because it is so hard to count all of those athletes doing it at the same time. So if you can utilize your extras to make it easier for the judge to see, like, okay, we're all going to go down. And now it's way easier for me as a judge when the people who are tumbling are up. I can count them because I can visually see it. So those are the
Yes.
tips and tricks for creativity.
Yes. And no, and I think it's our job too as coaches or choreographers to I wanna make a judge's life hard when I'm trying to hide something. So, like, I want like you're saying, when tucks are going and maybe our sets are not very strong, I want something else happening that's kinda making it a little bit harder to see it. It's so important to not make it easy to take points away from us. But
Yes.
then on the opposite side, when we're doing something so good that I know looks so good, I wanna make it super easy for judges to be able to pick up on this really clean, amazing transitional choreography moment, and really kind of like just knowing again those smoke and mirror spots to I also think it's so important that we know our strengths and our weaknesses, as coaches, as athletes, as a team, that we know like, ooh, maybe building is a little bit harder for us. So we need to work a little bit harder to hide those things. But if we're great at tumbling is our strength, or if we need to get it out of the way early on, it's also so important to just know your team and highlight those great things about them. Because every
Yes.
team, in the country is also dealing with things that they're good at and things that they're not so good at.
That's why I think it's so important that coaches understand it's okay to not have all of that in November, December, and January because you only get between a 1 and a 2, and there's not as much wiggle room in that creativity section. You're either gonna get a 1.5, a 1.6, 1.7, 1.8, 1.9, or 2.0. So even if you're at the bottom of the totem pole in creativity and you're scoring a 1.5 and 1.6, there's less wiggle room there than there is to lose on execution. So if you're scoring a 3.9 and a 4.0 in execution, but your creativity is low, well, creativity is something you can build on. And you can add that. You can add another element or another transition in January, February, March, where if your execution's not great in November, it's probably going to get a little bit better, but it's much easier to do that when you build on a solid foundation. So I tell coaches that all the time, like,
Yes.
understand where your strengths are. If your strengths are solid foundational skills, do that and then build on them as the season progresses.
Absolutely. Okay, so now this one's always a big kind of controversy in the all-star world is, you're seeing teams come from an event and they're like, "Well, I scored a 98 last weekend and this weekend I only scored a 97." I have my own opinion on this, but I'm going to let you go first of what's your kind of take or advice to kind of educate coaches on those kind of complaints that we end up seeing in the all-star world.
Yes. I am excited to hear your opinion because I love talking about this with people because before
Yes.
I was a judge, I had a very different opinion than what I do now. Um, I think it's a little bit of both things that I'm going to talk about. So the first thing is depending on what rubric you're using, if you're attending varsity events versus an individualized event producer, like that all comes into question because for some event producers, it's the same judges, and those same judges travel with that event from city to city to city. Some event producers have so many judges that they're constantly rotating it all the time. So that comes down to it too, because you could be at one event where maybe it's a newer panel of judges and they might be a little easier on you. And then you go to the next weekend and you have vet judges who have been doing it for 10 years and they might be a little tougher on you. So, and I think when we talk about like some of the bigger events like the summits, the US finals, the for open championship, the all-star worlds, like those are your vet judges that are there because they want the best of the best people with the most experience up on those stands. So that was so difficult for me before I started judging as a coach where we would go to say a smaller event in December and we would right off the rip get our paid summit bid and score a 99, and then we had to NCA and we score like a 91, and you're like, "What?
Uh-huh.
What?"
Yes.
And I get asked this all the time, and I talk to parents about this and coaches because it's like, "Oh my god, this is so frustrating." So, I think it really comes down to you if you stay within, like, a specific area, or maybe you're not going to varsity events. Maybe you're just going to like a smaller event producer back to back to back. Well, maybe those smaller event producers have the same panel of judges every event. Where if you're going to varsity who has tons of events, you may get someone different every weekend. So their perspectives are different. And now, yes, a lot of the scores are black and white. So your tumbling score, your building score, but there's also all those subjective categories. And the biggest one is execution. And so you have some judges who watch it. I tell people this all the time. I'm probably one of the toughest building judges you will ever meet. You probably don't want me on your panel because I really like reserve those top scores for the teams that deserve it. And so you may have me one weekend and I'm giving you a 3.6 in execution because I have the experience of being in score review, watching thousands of routines, really specializing in that. And next weekend, you might have a judge who's up there for the very first time. And they're just like, trying to get their stuff done within 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and that's really hard. So that's, like,
Yeah.
the real truth, and again, that's why I want to do this, and I want to talk about it because there's nothing wrong with that. Like, we're human. Like, it's okay that
Yes.
one weekend you have an experienced judge and one weekend you have somebody new because on the flip side, you're gonna have those coaches that are gonna say, "I don't want these 70-year-old ladies up there judging my routine. I want someone new." Okay, well, then you're probably gonna get a little bit different of scoring because certain sections of the rubric are subjective. So I think
Yeah.
that's the big nitty gritty of it. And what I try to say to coaches and athletes is really focus on the comments because those are like real time, real person. Like someone is telling you, this is what I saw with my own eyes and this is what you need to fix. And focus on like that usually it's, like, across the board. Like, if you're looking at the other divisions and everyone within that level or everyone on that panel of judges is scoring the same, then you need to take that into perspective that, okay, at least the I will tell you, the judges are consistent throughout the day because if we're not consistent, we're getting yelled at. Someone is coming up to us and saying,
Yes.
"You are scoring that level 2 division way higher than you're scoring this level. What's going on?" I will say every event producer that I work for holds us to a very high standard, and if they see
Absolutely.
any little bit of weirdness, someone's coming to you. So I will say day to day, it's very consistent because you have the same person. But when you go from competition to competition, it can fluctuate. I just rambled, but like I feel so
No,
passionate
yeah.
about it because I get it.
Yes.
Like I know what it was like as a
Yeah.
coach, and now being a judge, I'm like, oh, so that's why my score was
Yes.
a 97 here and a 92 here.
Yes. I think, my take on it is that coaches are just so fixated on that number. And I think that that number doesn't matter as long as everything falls where it's supposed to. So, like,
Yes,
if I'm
yes,
supposed to be in second or I'm supposed to be in first, whether I'm in first with a 99 and then the next weekend I'm still in first, but, maybe it went to a 98, like, or, I'm really am supposed to be in third and I'm in third with a 98 and then I'm still in third with a 92. Like, as
yes,
long as that kind of falls into place, I think that coaches should take less worry about those numbers, as well as I want to be scored hard because if I start just seeing 98s and 99s, then like I assume that we're good, like we're
right.
Gucci. We don't need to do anything. I want tough scoring so that I can continue to improve and grow from all your different subjective opinions. And I want to take every piece of that to continue to make my team great for end of the season or for
Yes,
some of those bigger events that we're going to go to later on. And I think that that's a big piece of it. And then I also think that it matters kind of who goes where. So like if a team comes out of the gate and they're incredible, judging maybe is not wanting to go too high because they want to leave room in case there's more, but it just then that sets the tone for where the division's going to go. And like it doesn't there's no rhyme or reason to like how that team ended up going first, but it just kind of sets, again, the tone for it. And I love that you also touched on that it's not just allowed to be a judge that doesn't like you.
oh
That
god,
like
no.
there's a judge up there that just has a bad, vibe of you or used to work at this gym and now doesn't like this person. I love that you're touching on that for sure. I'm very familiar with like the varsity judging and the United that they have people on there with eyes and ears making sure that people are staying consistent, making sure that you are giving comments that validate why you're scoring, high or low or in between, so that coaches and athletes are able to learn and grow and continue to improve on this journey.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
I think that sometimes they do get it wrong, and then I think that's when it's a great time to be able to have those healthy conversations and AccuScore and ask. And I've found that judges always want to help. Also, that a lot of times, again, that you're a judge that has also been in their shoes. You have been in the position where your team has, you've thought that they deserved something that they didn't get, or you've scored something that you thought it should have been higher or different. And like, yeah, we've all been in those shoes and are just doing the best we can with the tools we're given.
That is something that I've had to talk with people before where they're like, "Oh, well, the judges are biased because she used to be at this gym." And I'm like, "Well, you have to think about it for a minute. If you're a cheerleading judge, you probably have some sort of cheerleading background. Nobody woke up one day as a basketball referee and said, 'I'm gonna judge cheerleading.' Like, you have to have some sort of connection with cheerleading, whether you cheered somewhere, you coach somewhere, whatever it is. But when you're up on that stand, you're held to the standard of you have to be consistent, and it also sticks out like a sore thumb if you're not. So, like I said, I really give praise to all of the event producers because they really do hold us to that standard where and if you do make a mistake, they're so great at coming to you and saying, "Hey, I noticed that you scored this earlier. Just so you know, this is how it should have been scored." And then for me, when I first started judging, I was taking a note on that to make sure that I got it right the next time that I had to score it. I mean, we're human. Things happen. It happens so fast. But to go back to your point quick about the placement, I was working score review for an event and I had this exact conversation with the coach, and the girl that I was working with said exactly what you just said. She was like, "Well, is the placement correct?" And the coach was like, "Well, yeah, but we got a 92." And she was like, "But the placement is correct." And so for
Yes.
that day and that moment, your 92 that you scored in January doesn't matter when you get to April. Like, it doesn't there's no it's not like football where you go 0 and 5 or 5 and 2, like, this that doesn't matter in cheerleading. It's only that day. So that is such a great point to really, like, emphasize is the placement correct?
And I think we just get so fired up, again, passionate as coaches about that number and, wanting, because we're chasing perfection in our sport.
Right.
And I get it. And we've talked on several of these episodes that like perfection, it's impossible, but we're chasing it. We're chasing it. We're going for it. That's like the goal is trying to score that perfect pyramid to get those perfect execution points to like have those hit zero routines. Like it's the dream, but like understanding that piece that it's not gonna ever happen. Like perfection, I mean, it's something that we're going for, but like perfection doesn't exist. Like you can always do more, improve more, and become more. And I think also the transparency with your families of the process of a season. I'm always telling my families that, when we're at our first event in December, it's to get on the score sheet. Like that's it. Like I want to
Right,
see it on a
right.
score sheet. I want to see what's sticking. I want to see what judges are taking. Cause again, we have a different take of the routine. We have that emotion piece. And like that's what makes coaching and that connection with your kids so special is because we see them in a totally different light than a judge is going to see them. And it
Right.
comes back to that of just being transparent of the process and that again, there is a little bit of subjective, like
Yeah.
there
Oh,
is
yeah.
a little bit. So our job is to make sure that we are never just point 0.3 better, that we are 2 points better.
Right.
That like that we can leave no doubt in their mind that across the board, we were the better team when it comes to that. Well, maybe it's this or maybe it's that. Ooh, it's an apple and an orange, like what do you prefer? Yeah, the goal is just to kind of take it to that next level
Yeah.
away and in scoring. Yeah, that's great. Okay. So now aside from judging, you do a lot of these score reviews. When is your ideal time to review scores, with a team? Do you want to see them early on in the season? Would you prefer to them to get a couple of events and then, kind of review their stuff before postseason? What ideally is the best time that you would suggest a team to reach out to kind of get in contact with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's the beginning of the season when you're doing choreography, when you're whether you're doing in-house choreography or you're bringing somebody in, I think it's really great to just, like, check with someone who is on the judging side and just be like, "Hey, here's the skills I have listed," or even, like, block out your routine and just say, "Can you make sure my numbers are checking?" Because there will be people who go into November competitions with not the right numbers, and it could be a quick oversight, like you mentioned before, we added someone last minute or whatever, so I think a quick, like, score sheet check when you're doing choreography is huge, and then I say the earlier
Yes.
the better, like, as soon as you get that routine out on the floor, I always tell coaches, like, "You're more than welcome to bring me your score sheets from an event, but like we just talked about, it is subjective." So I could look at that and be like, "Oh, that judge scored you a 3.9. I would have scored you a 3.5." But again, like I always say, I'm a tougher building judge, so it's probably better to hear an opinion from me because if I'm scoring at a 4.0, it's probably going to get a 4.0 from somebody else because I'm looking for like the nitty gritty stuff. So I would say like the earlier the better because you're going to be able to make maybe some of those bigger tweaks in the beginning of the year if like a section is off or something's really standing out. And
Yep.
then mid season when you start to get into like that January, February, March, where you're sometimes competing 2 or 3 times a month, and it's like, "Okay, well, what small changes can we make?" We're really starting to maybe do some upgrades or add in those creative elements, get ready for end of season events that are around the corner because there's nothing more frustrating than when you get to an end of season event and you get your score sheet back and it's something that you could have made an adjustment to if someone caught it for you, and like you said, as a coach, you're watching your practice sometimes 2 to 3 times a week for multiple hours at a time. Then you're going home and laying in bed and watching it for 4 hours on slow-mo
Yes.
because that's just the nature of us. And you're hyper fixated on, "Well, we practiced this done 100 times." But when I look at it, I don't know who any of your kids are, or even if I do, I'm looking at it from an outside perspective, and that is so difficult to do as a coach. Like, even when I
Yes.
was coaching and judging, I couldn't do it. I'm like, "Well, Sally
It's
broke her
hard.
arm last week, so it's okay that that stunt looks like that." It is,
Yes.
but and it's not that as a judge I don't care about you because I do care, but, like, I don't see her as Sally. I see her as an athlete on a senior free team that I'm judging right now. So just I think there's really like 3 quarters, like choreography in the beginning of the year, set yourself up for success. Okay, our routine, we're doing full outs, we're competing once or twice. Is there anything big that sticks out? And then, okay, January, February, March, we're getting to the nitty gritty. I really want you to give me like the heavy hitters, the small things, give me everything that I can fix and then get to summit at the end of the year. Really like 3 checkpoints. And
Yes.
even in your gym, if you don't have a connection with a judge or someone who's in scoring, ask another coach to do it who doesn't coach your team, or ask if you have a friend that works at a program out of state, like, just getting other eyes on your routine is so important.
Yes, like utilizing those resources. Yes, I
Yes.
think that's a huge thing. Okay, so now you always are on your social media, kind of sharing different takeaways, tips, and tricks, and insights, and answering questions that people have kind of sent into you. Where's the best place to follow you and to see kind of your content?
Definitely my Instagram and now my TikTok. I can't even believe those words are coming out of my mouth because I said I would never be a TikToker, but here I am and I'm figuring it out.
Yes.
So my
Yep.
Instagram is called Scoresheets with Gabby Mauro. I've used that for cheerleading for so many years and now I've just turned it into this platform, like you said, of tips and tricks and people will throw me questions in my DMs and it's so fun. Anytime I get a message, I'm like, oh, somebody else to help. This is fun. And then
Yes.
my TikTok is Scoresheets with Gabby M, and I pretty much use both of the platforms together. I love recording videos and taking clips and, like, people will send me their routines and say, "Hey, use this." And I'm like, "Okay.
Yeah.
Are you sure you want me to use it?" But yeah, I'll use it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's, so clear that you are not only passionate about, your role in the industry, but that you also are super educated and, wanting to help others succeed. And I think that's a really beautiful, wonderful thing. And we're so lucky to have had you on today. There were countless tips, tricks, things, takeaways I can't wait for my own staff to get to listen to. And yeah, you're just a breath of fresh air. I'm grateful to have met you today and to have been able to, like I said, pick your brain on some important things that I think can help coaches really set themselves up for success this season. Yeah, and we're grateful for all the hard work you do and appreciate you taking the time to again educate and kind of share these things with all of us here today. So, yeah,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much for being on.
Yeah, thank you. I love this. Like you said, I just love educating and I just think that like cheerleading is such a special sport and we put so much time and energy and effort into it and it's just different than other sports. We're not like yes, there's a rule book, but it's just different. And I think bridging that
Yes.
gap is so important to me. We spend all this money and time in it that I just want to be a resource for people to know like, hey, we as judges are human too, and a lot of us have been in your shoes and we really are here to help.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. No, this has been great. Thank you again for being on and have a great season judging.
Thanks.
We don't want you on our panel for that building, unless till we're ready, really ready. But no, it's really great what you're doing. And thank you so much for being such a light in the industry. And yeah, have a great season.
Thank you. You too. Maybe I'll see you guys.
Yeah, I hope so.
Uh,
Awesome. Okay.
thank you.